This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kaiser.
I'm a big sports fan, as you know. I love a tournament. I love the playoffs. I love the big show. As of this recording, we are in the middle of March Madness, which is the college basketball playoffs here in the States. 64 teams qualified to compete for the coveted spot of champion. And to give you some perspective on that number, there are over 1,300 four-year colleges with basketball teams at the NCAA, D1, D2, D3, and NAIA levels. There are also 600 junior colleges that currently have basketball teams. Altogether, that means there are nearly 2,000 basketball colleges across the nation. So to narrow it down to 64 that compete to play in the ultimate championship game, that gives you some perspective. Basketball in America is a big deal, and March Madness is an even bigger deal. Hey everyone, it's Mary Lou Kaiser. Welcome to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast. And this month of March, my theme is money. And today I'm going to look at how money plays a role in several things, including the basketball tournament itself that we call March Madness, but also how it is tied into creating how we Americans think about ourselves. So stick with me here. It's going to be an interesting conversation. The pandemic canceled March Madness in 2020, so the appetite for this year's tournament is off the charts. I love March Madness because I love watching young men and women play their hearts out in a game. These are 18, 19, 20-year-olds who want to win because winning is fun, because they can be a part of history. They aren't playing for a paycheck. They are playing for school pride, for accomplishment, not because they are contractually obligated, but because they love the game. As soon as money enters the conversation, the game changes. It just does. Not saying that's good or bad, simply stating that money alters the way people think about themselves and each other. And in the States, with the amount of money that is paid to professional athletes, it's absolutely staggering. And many of these young people who become professionals go from having no money at all or very, very little to being millionaires, multimillionaires overnight. And that transition is pretty intense. And I'm going to talk about that particular phenomenon in another episode. Today, I do want to focus on March Madness. When suddenly basketball or any other endeavor becomes a job and not a passion, it's not something you simply do because you love it. It becomes the way you pay your bills and live your life. And again, that is a really interesting space to be in. And it really does have an impact on how a person shows up and plays their position in life. Now, I love watching the games, but I also enjoy studying the commercials that air during March Madness. After all, the commercials are what underwrite the entire tournament. And you can learn a lot about what companies know about their audience from the ads they put out. And also, you can learn a lot about, again, how this dance between the consumer brands that are always running in the backdrop of our lives and individuals are, showing up to each other. I find that dynamic really, really interesting. So who exactly is footing the bill for March Madness? Let's look at some numbers first. According to an article on CNBC, there's $1 billion on the line this year for CBS Sports and the Turner Broadcasting Company, which partner up to bring viewers the game. CBS Sports and Turner Broadcasting are two huge media companies in the States. And March Madness is the most profitable playoffs in U.S. sports media rights deals. I didn't know that, but it makes sense because it's a 2.5 week tournament, unlike the Super Bowl, which is a one-day event. Even hockey playoffs and baseball playoffs don't compare to the intensity of a 2.5 week tournament the way March Madness is. So March Madness is an event that is foundational to CBS Sports, and with the pandemic-related restrictions that are still in place, producing the event this year has not gone as smoothly as in pre-pandemic times. People just can't be in the spaces in the same way. So I find that really interesting and the effects that it's having on our experience. For example, at the conclusion of today's game between the Oregon Ducks and Iowa, which Oregon won, by the way, 15 points over Iowa, go Ducks, the analysts usually will come on after a game and do a breakdown of what they saw. And it's highly orchestrated. And again, I'm a huge sports fan, so I'm used to the way this goes. Today on CBS, the analysts' mics weren't working, but the musical score that goes with the analysis was playing just fine. And then the video feed, the clips of the different scenes from the game, those were also playing just fine. So there was music and video replays, but no human voices, no hearing what the talking heads had to say about what they witnessed. Now that glitch went on for several minutes. It wasn't just a couple of seconds, but it went on for several minutes. And as an Oregon Ducks fan, of course, I was frustrated because it's always nice to hear what they have to say about how wonderful the team is. But on a bigger scale, I mean, that's what gets people fired, right? That is the kind of glitch that gets people fired. Now, maybe this year they'll be more relaxed because, again, we're living in a pandemic world. But it also makes companies who have paid huge amounts of money to advertise during the tournament very unhappy. So how much money are we talking about here? I could only find 2019 stats, so, keep that in mind. But the top March Madness national TV advertiser in 2019 was General Motors, also known as GM. They spent $75 million on ads, according to a London-based media analyst group. The rest of the top 5 companies who advertised, we're talking about AT&T, which is phone service and also streaming services, Berkshire Hathaway, who is the parent company of Geico, which is an insurance company, Capital One Financial, credit cards and money lending, and Coca-Cola. So all of those combined, collectively, they spent $177 million on ads. And again, why so much money? What is in it for these companies? Well, let's go back to the 2.5 week long tournament. That's a huge amount of time for eyeballs to be tuning into anything. It's a tournament also that breeds both the collective feeling of being in this together. We're all tuning in. There's all kinds of betting going on. There's brackets that you can fill out and you can enter into sweepstakes. I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on with March Madness. And again, all tied to money in some way or another. And there's also an intimacy that occurs. Like you feel as if a brand really gets you, right? Based on the way they present their product, the story that they build around their products. And for anyone in business, that is the sweet spot. If you can be that collective and intimate at the same time, I mean, that's absolutely a home run. So I wanted to share with you some insights that I've picked up this year about where companies are putting their money and the message behind the ads and why this is such a lucrative tournament. So I mentioned insurance companies. There's several here in the States. They usually use humor because, insurance, let's be honest, is so boring, right? So all the insurance companies have deployed copywriting firms to come up with some really funny and outlandish ads. And so there's that. Now, fast food companies are popular as well. There's places like Arby's, Jack in the Box, Subway sandwiches, and they also tend to use humor, but they also are really, really good at talking to their target audience. Taco Bell is another one. They understand who their primary audience is. And so when you listen really closely to what the copy is, what the words coming out of the announcer's mouth or the characters in the ads, it is unbelievably dialed in and calculated. Fascinating to me. I am not Taco Bell's target audience. So I'm looking at this from the outside in and thinking, wow, is that really what a lot of people in this country think about and are act like? It's interesting to me. Now, Disney, their big message is dream about tomorrow, make your dreams come true, come to Disney World. And they're showing people at Disney World wearing masks. So I think that's interesting how they've incorporated the pandemic kind of behavior and saying, listen, it's safe to come here. You can wear your mask and you can still make your dreams come true. Credit companies like Experian are advertising, and there's a message there that you can always boost your credit score. Subway's tagline, choose better, be better. There's the competition between the iPhone and the Samsung. So you're either an iPhone user or a Samsung user, and they have completely different vibes, messages. Ultimately, it is you are your phone. So I find that interesting. Sherwin-Williams, which is a paint company, has been advertising pretty heavily, and their whole message is paint your world beautiful. The Masters, which is the golf tournament that happens every year in Georgia, their tagline is spring is finally here, a tradition unlike any other. Then, of course, you've got some shows that air on CBS, cars.com. It's magical. You know, you can order a car from your smartphone and it's delivered to your house. I mean, these are the kinds of things. The new Samsung phone, going back to the phones, be epic every day is their message. Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, keep fishing because that's your reward for working hard. And then imagine yourself in a new Toyota. So what do all of these ads have in common? One of them is this aspirational language or message. In other words, by using this particular product, you will be advancing your life. You will be achieving something. You aspire to something more. That's a huge, huge message here in the States. And I think it's now, an export. I think worldwide, there is that sense of you always want to be chasing more. Here in America, we are dreamers and doers. There's this thing called the American Dream, which was actually manufactured by a marketing company to, guess what, sell more products. There's this whole image of what the American Dream is. There's actually an ad that talks about, the ad is for Lowe's, which is a lumber and hardware kind of big box store, again, here in the States, where you can go and get things to paint your house, build a fence, all the hardware that goes with, refinishing a dresser or, installing a new sink and toilet and bathtub in your bathroom. I mean, again, there's this sense of, and this message of, America, you can always be getting better. You can always be doing more. You can always make your house look prettier because what you have right now isn't enough, right? There's always something better somewhere else. There's always a new horizon to go after or another movie we can create in cinema quality video on our Samsung phone. Being an American means always having something else to do or someplace else to go, especially when you're in that mid-range, hardworking. Retirement is still a ways off. But then there's the ads that are aimed towards people who are ready to retire, which honestly, that is an episode all to itself. I have so many thoughts about the way retirement is presented to us here in the States and also manufactured into this thing. So now I'll do something on that another time. But right now, going back to this, as Americans, we expect things of ourselves. And we expect the way this country is built to allow us to chase whatever dream we want to chase. That's why So many consumer brands continue to plop down huge amounts of money to get in front of those of us who show up to watch young men and women play a game for the rights to be called champions. These companies know what matters to us, and they can spoon feed it to us, one ad after another, because we're a captive audience. We're not going anywhere when the games are on. And so with each ad, they remind us about what to pay attention to in our lives, everything from a fresh coat of paint to a new car. They remind us what it means to be American. Yes, the dream is still alive. Yes, you can still aspire to be more than you are right now. And they remind us why we are here, for family, for those special moments, for capturing those special moments, for bonding with our friends, all while drinking a Corona or a hard cider or a Coca-Cola that has a weird flavor, right? And from a money point of view, it's a beautiful thing. So March Madness and money, the two go hand in hand, and it's not necessarily bad. It's a big part of the economy. And perhaps even more importantly, it's a big part of who we are and how we think about ourselves. So that's it for today, team. Hope I gave you something to think about. It's really interesting, the dynamic between advertisements and content that we want to enjoy, the entertainment that we tune into, and how we think about ourselves. So with that said, make it a great day. Get out there and play your position, because it's always a great day to do that. This is Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Got a great key offensive strategy you like to share? Write to us at coach@pyppodcast.com or on Twitter, use #PYP and let us know how you're running your ball into the end zone for those game-winning touchdowns.